The Testament of Zebulun, the sixth son of Jacob and Leah, of the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs. The Testament of Zebulun. The copy of the words of Zebulun, which he enjoined on his sons before he died in the 114th year of his life, 2 years after the death of Joseph, and he said to them, Hearken to me, you my sons of Zebulun, attend to the words of your father. I, Zebulun, was born a good gift to my parents. For when I was born, my father was increased very exceedingly, both in flocks and in herds, when with the straight rods he had his portion. I am not conscious that I have sinned all my days save in thought, nor yet do I remember that I have done any iniquity except the sin of ignorance which I committed against Joseph. For I covenant with my brethren not to tell my father what had been done. But I wept in secret many days on account of Joseph, for I feared my brethren, because they had all agreed that if anyone should declare the secret, he should be slain. But when they wished to kill him, I adjured them much with tears not to be guilty of this sin. For Simeon and Gad came against Joseph to kill him, and he said unto them with tears, Pity me, my brethren, have mercy upon the bowels of Jacob our father. Lay not upon me your hands to shed innocent blood, for I have not sinned against you. And if indeed I have sinned with chastening, chastise me, my brethren, but lay not upon me your hands for the sake of Jacob our father. And as he spoke these words, wailing as he did so, I was unable to bear his lamentation, and began to weep, and my liver was poured out, and all the substance of my bowels was loosened. And I wept with Joseph, and my heart sounded, and the joints of my body trembled, and I was not able to stand. And when Joseph saw me weeping with him, and them coming against him to slay him, he fled behind me, beseeching them. But meanwhile Reuben arose and said, Come, my brethren, let us not slay him, but let us cast him into one of these dry pits, which our fathers digged and found no water. For this cause mighty God Ahiah forbade that water should rise up in them, and in order that Joseph should be preserved. And they did so, until they sold him to the Ishmaelites. For in his price I had no share, my children, but Simeon and Gad had 6 other of our brethren took the price of Joseph, and bought sandals for themselves and their wives and their children, saying, We will not eat of it, for it is the price of our brother's blood, but we will surely tread it under foot, because he said that he would be king over us, and so let us see what will become of his dreams. Therefore it is written in the writing of the law of Moses, that whosoever will not raise up seed to his brother, his sandals should be unloosened, and they should spit in his face. And the brethren of Joseph wished not that their brother should live, and mighty God Ahiah loosened them the sandals which they wore against Joseph their brother. For when they came into Egypt, they were unloosed by the servant of Joseph outside the gate, and so they made obeisance to Joseph after the fashion of King Pharaoh. And not only did they make obeisance to him, but were spit upon also, falling down before him forthwith. And so they were put to shame before the Egyptians. For after this the Egyptians heard all the evils they had done unto Joseph. And after he was sold, my brother sat down to eat and drink. But I, through pity for Joseph, did not eat, but watched the pit, since Judah feared lest Simeon, Dan, and Gad should rush off and slay him. But when they saw that I did not eat, they set me to watch him till he was sold to the Ishmaelites. And when Reuben came and heard that while he was away Joseph had been sold, he rent his garments, and mourning said, How shall I look on the face of my father Jacob? And he took the money and ran after the merchants, but as he failed to find them, he returned grieving. But the merchants had left the broad road and marched through the Troglodytes by a short cut. But Reuben was grieved, and eat no food that day. Dan therefore came to him and said, We not neither grieve, for we have found what we can say to our father Jacob. Let us slay a kid of the goat and dip it in the coat of Joseph, and let us send it to Jacob, saying, Now is this the coat of thy son? And they did so, for they stripped off from Joseph his coat when they were selling him, and put upon him the garment of a slave. Now Simeon took the coat and would not give it up, for he not slain him. We all arose up and said unto him, If thou give not up the coat, we will say to our father that thou alone didst this evil thing in Israel. And so he gave it up unto them, and they did even as Dan had said. And now, my children, I bid you to keep the commands of mighty God Ahiah, and show mercy to your neighbors, and to have compassion toward all, not toward men only, but also toward beasts. For all this thing said mighty God Ahiah, bless me, and when all my brethren were sick, I escaped without sickness. For mighty God Ahiah knoweth the purpose of each. Have therefore compassion in your hearts, my children, because even as a man doeth to his neighbor, even so also will mighty God Ahiah do to him. For the sons of my brethren were sickening and were dying on account of Joseph, because they showed no mercy in their hearts, but my sons were preserved without sickness, as you know. And when I was in the land of Canaan by the seacoast, I made a catch of fish for Jacob my father, and when many were choked in the sea, I continued unhurt. I was the first to make a boat to sail upon the sea, for mighty God Ahiah gave me understanding and wisdom therein. And I let down a rubber behind it, and stretched a sail upon another upright piece of wood in the midst. And I sailed therein along the shores, catching fish for the house of my father, until we came to Egypt. And through compassion I shared my catch with every stranger. And if a man were a stranger or sick of age, I boiled the fish and dressed them well, and offered them to all men as every man had need, grieving with and having compassion upon them. Wherefore also mighty God Ahiah satisfied me with the abundance of fish when catching fish, for he that shareth with his neighbors receiveth manifold more from Ahiah, mighty God. For 5 years I caught fish, and gave thereof to every man whom I saw, and sufficed for all the house of my father. And in the summer I caught fish, and in the winter I kept sheep with my brethren. Now I will declare unto you what I did. I saw a man in distress through nakedness in the winter time, and had compassion upon him, and stole away a garment secretly from my father's house, and gave it to him who was in distress. Do you therefore, my children, from that which mighty God Ahiah bestow upon you, show compassion and mercy without hesitation to all men, and give to every man with a good heart. And if you have not the wherewithal to give to him that needeth, have compassion for him in bowels of mercy. I know that my hand found not the wherewithal to give to him that needed, and I walked with him weeping for 7 furlongs, and my bowels yearned toward him in compassion. Have therefore yourselves also, my children, compassion toward every man with mercy, that mighty God Ahiah also may have compassion and mercy upon you. Because also in the last days mighty God Ahiah will send his compassion on the earth, and wheresoever he findeth bowels of mercy, he dwelleth in him. For in the degree in which a man have compassion upon his neighbors, in the same degree had mighty God Ahiah also upon him. And when we went down into Egypt, Joseph bore no malice against us. To whom taking heed, do you also, my children, approve yourselves without malice, and love one another, and do not set down in account each one of you evil against his brother. For this breaketh unity, and divided all kindred, and troubled the soul, and wearied away the countenance. Observe therefore the waters, and know when they flow together, they sweep along stones, trees, earth, and other things. But if they are divided into many streams, the earth swallowed them up, and they vanish also. So shall you also be if you be divided. Be not you therefore divided into 2 heads, for everything which mighty God Ahiah made had but 1 head, and 2 shoulders, and 2 hands, and 2 feet, and all the thing all the remaining members. For I have learned in the writings of my father that you shall be divided in Israel, and you shall follow 2 kings, and shall work every abomination, and your enemy shall lead you captive, and you shall be evil entreated among the Gentiles, with many infirmities and tribulations. And after these things you shall remember mighty God Ahiah, and repent, and he shall cause you to return, for he is merciful and compassionate. And he set it not down in account evil to the sons of men, because they are flesh, and the spirits of deceit deceive them in all their deeds. And after these things there shall arise unto you mighty God Ahiah himself, the light of righteousness, and the healing and compassion shall be in his wings. He shall redeem all the captivity of the sons of men from Beliar, and every spirit of deceit shall be trodden down. And he shall bring back all the Gentiles into zeal for him, and you shall return into your land, and you shall see him in Jerusalem for his name's sake. And again, through the wickedness of your works shall you provoke him to anger, and you shall be cast away by him until the time of consummation. And now, my children, grieve not that I am dying, nor be cast down in that I am coming to my end. For I shall rise again in the midst of you, as a ruler in the midst of his sons. And I shall rejoice in the midst of my tribe, as many as shall keep the law of mighty God Ahiah, and the commandments of Zebulun their father. But upon the ungodly shall mighty God Ahiah bring eternal fire, and destroy them throughout all generations. But I am now hastening away to my rest, as did also my fathers. But do you fear mighty God Ahiah, our mighty God and King, with all your strength, all the days of your life. And when he had said these things, he fell asleep at a good old age, and his sons laid him in a wooden coffin, and afterwards they carried him up and buried him in Hebron with his fathers. And that is the end. Thank you for listening.